From our studios in New York, here again is Stone Phillips.
He was an ordinary drunk with an extraordinary job. Every night, hundreds of thousands of television viewers counted on him to tell them the truth about their world. Meanwhile, he was living a lie. It's one thing to wreck your life with alcohol. It's another to do it while a city watches. Here's John Larson.
You're an Emmy Award-winning reporter. How do you write the lead to this story?
His name is George Watson. He was a journalist for a quarter of a century. He drank himself out of a job. And now he's on the verge of being homeless. Here's his story.
Not bad. So how does it end?
With my last breath.
Beyond the social drink and the occasional cocktail is a world of uncommon despair.
Alcohol is a difficult mistress.
It is a seductive world where problem drinkers learn the real power of alcohol on the day they try to stop. In this alcoholic world,
And I'm George Watson.
one man would publicly gamble everything, his home, his job, even his life, for a drink. In 1976, KTVU in Oakland, California, hired a young, good-looking reporter who was about to make his mark on the world. His name, George Watson. His assignments took him from a Marine boot camp to an underground expedition.
Oh boy.
But as Watson was professionally on his way up, he was personally beginning a downward slide. Watson had a dark side, and the only question was, how far down would it take him?
He was excited about the job. I was excited about the job. We meshed. We loved working together.
And he was talented.
Very talented.
Watson's partner in most of his on-air exploits was cameraman Don McQuaig. Watson and McQuaig became good friends. They worked hard, and they played hard. But for Watson, the drinking was becoming a deadly game.
We sat in a bar one night, and he told me, he said, my best friend is a bottle of vodka. And it stunned me.
Did you think he was telling the truth?
Yeah. Yeah. God, I mean, what a lonely existence.
Few knew the extent of Watson's drinking. He drank vodka, mostly at night, by himself.
Roll 19 sound. Take.
And now,
Stand by the boom on
live,
3.
the Bay
Then
Area's
camera 4,
number
no
one
box,
and
with
most
TV1.
respected news source.
But despite his drinking, on air, Watson became a fixture on Bay Area television throughout the 1970s and 80s.
Sit down.
Good evening, I'm George Watson.
He anchored the weekend news and won 4 Emmys for reporting.
He really did keep it together.
Absolutely, and it was amazing. It was amazing. I just thought, this is a special person. He can do it. He can do both.
It is hoped.
But by late 1991, even Watson knew he could no longer do both. He checked into a substance abuse treatment center, but only stopped drinking for 1 month.
The United Nations set
Within
up
a
the
year,
flight ban
frightened
over
and
Southern
still
Iraq
unable to
protect
control his
Saddam.
drinking, Watson turned to his boss, KTVU general manager Kevin O'Brien.
We gave him a leave of absence to get himself together.
I felt like I was going to someone in my family and saying, I need help. Will you help me? And he did.
Where'd you go?
Betty Ford.
Admissions, this is Sherry. May I help you?
The Betty Ford Center is a world-renowned substance abuse treatment clinic in Southern California. Here he considered his family tree. It was deeply rooted in alcohol.
My father choked on his vomit. My grandfather was an alcoholic, and he quit after he killed a man.
Watson was at the center for 28 days.
It was a wonderful environment. I didn't miss alcohol at all.
And how long did you remain sober after Betty Ford?
About 45 minutes.
You literally walked out the door and...
Got a ride to the airport and drank at the airport.
Watson took an Alaska Airlines flight home and continued drinking on the plane. Back at work, Watson deceived everyone, including the man who sent him to Betty Ford, Kevin O'Brien. O'Brien had an idea he thought would help Watson stay sober.
I felt he owed it to himself and to the viewers to make a statement.
And now, live.
On April 3rd, 1993, his first day back on the air, Watson made that statement,
Many of you have noticed that I have been gone for a long time, almost 3 months. The reason for my absence was my dependence on alcohol. I have been an alcoholic for some time, and it was time for me to do something about it. I got help.
Watson had just let the entire Bay Area in on his secret.
And to everyone, I ask for your support and your prayers. Good night.
There was only one problem. It wasn't completely honest.
No, but I mean, I didn't lie. I didn't say that I wasn't drinking, and I didn't say I was.
Did you at that time have any idea that he was still drinking?
No, none. I really felt the worst was over. I was very proud of him. I was thrilled.
Watson's life became a charade, a living lie both off the air and on.
Addiction, whether it be drugs or alcohol, knows no boundaries.
He became so used to lying to others, lying to himself was easy.
But you never drank during the day?
No.
You were never drunk on the air?
Never.
Never?
Well, they may be for the smallest members of our households, but...
On January 9th, 1994, he appeared intoxicated. It was subtle.
Consumer reporter Tom Bakar is here to tell us what toy makers hope our children will want for Christmas this coming year.
Watson may have deceived most viewers, but not people at work.
He had nobody fooled. He thought he was very clever. And in hindsight, maybe we should have all nailed him on it. This guy was really loved there. Everybody loved him.
George sat...
As one last incentive, O'Brien offered Watson one last chance, a new contract and a raise, with the stipulation that he enter one more rehabilitation program, his third in 3 years.
We got to the point where we put George on a sudden death type of scenario. If you have one more drink, it's over forever.
Twice a week, Watson was tested for alcohol. Twice a week, he passed. But secretly, George Watson was still drinking. He thought he'd figured out how to beat the system by not drinking 12 hours before each test. But on March 2nd, 1994, the inevitable finally happened.
Good evening, I'm George Watson.
16 months after leaving the Betty Ford Center, George Watson tested positive for alcohol, betraying the trust of his boss, Kevin O'Brien.
No more favors, no more BS, no more stories, no more manipulation. It's up to you now, pal. We're all going to watch.
He was angry, he was hurt, he was disappointed, and he fired me. It was very quick. I didn't even clean up my desk. I just walked out the door.
How soon after that did you have a drink?
As soon as I got home.
You're free to drink now, right? Don't have to worry about those urine tests anymore.
Not having to be tested twice a week like a racehorse, that was a wonderful thing to not have to do.
Watson disappeared from the outside world, the power of alcohol robbing him of almost everything. The last of his 4 marriages, his home. He now rented a small apartment, his vodka never further away than the kitchen. He'd even lost his friends. Don McQuaig gave up on him.
It killed me. It was like the end of a marriage. I mean, we went through some dangerous times, some terrific adventures together. I loved the guy.
Conflict with Japan was a hotly debated possibility, but far from reality.
Gone was the $103,000 a year job and the work he cherished.
I lost more than my livelihood. You know, I wasn't selling pizza at Woolworths. You know, I had a job that I loved.
Nonetheless, he drank hard for 2 years. And then one day last winter, he was suddenly back on the air.
Are you drinking today?
No.
It was a talk show on his old station. George Watson was now the subject of the kind of interviews he used to do.
We hope you can make a choice. Or have you made it?
No, I haven't made it yet. I don't know what I'm going to do.
His appearance was so disturbing, his hand shaking because he needed a drink.
I was very apprehensive about doing this because my isolation has become so intense. But I was hoping that the exposure will help me get a job.
Got to stop drinking first.
Yeah, I guess so.
Thank you, George.
Okay.
There were no job offers. Almost 2 months later, Watson spoke with us and began our interview claiming he had not been drinking that day.
I got the sense you'd been drinking when I met you at the door.
That's probably a carryover from last night.
How late did you go last night?
I was up until about 5 a.m.
That would qualify as this morning, I think.
What made you think that I'd been drinking?
I could smell it.
Oh.
Why don't you just not drink today?
You gotta want to. If you don't want to, it ain't gonna happen.
Do you want to?
Not yet.
It's not hurting bad enough yet.
Not yet.
There was no hope left in George Watson. We suspected the next time we would hear of him would be his obituary.
Where do you honestly think you're gonna...
Dead.
There was a very dead Christmas tree laying against the wall, broken glass on the floor in front of an easy chair that George had probably been sitting in for months.
2 weeks after our interview, almost 2 years after he'd been fired, friends of Watson's, who had not seen him in 22 years, found him in his apartment. He was still alive.
George was in serious trouble, real serious trouble. He was probably very close to death. When we walked in on him that day...
Mary Ellen Newman, an alcohol counselor, was there with 3 of Watson's college friends. Watson had been Fred Fairley's best man.
Dear George, when we met a couple of weeks ago, I wasn't sure what to expect.
Fred Fairley read Watson this letter, pleading with him to get help.
The drinking is taking its toll on you, is out of control, and will eventually kill you.
But Watson's friends did not know that he had been drinking at least a quart of vodka every day and had sustained life-threatening liver damage.
Please know that I care about you and am prepared to hold out a hand to a very important person in my life. Take it.
Watson finally agreed to be taken to a rehabilitation center, ironically nestled among the vineyards of California's wine country. Watson arrived safely here at Mountain Vista Farm, but as difficult as it was for him to decide to stop drinking, it was about to get worse. Without alcohol, he became violently ill, going into convulsions, having first one seizure and then another. He was rushed to Sonoma Valley Hospital, where doctors tried to control his seizures. But after 35 years of alcohol abuse, 35 years of denial and broken promises, Watson survived.
You look absolutely terrific.
Thank you, John.
Clear-eyed, thin. How much weight have you lost?
About 30 pounds. It's like a new life. John, I'm 50 years old, and I feel like I've been given a second chance.
Watson says he has not had a drink for 4 months. But of course, this is not the first time he has tried to sober up. But it is the first time he is facing many of the things of which he is not proud. The lies, to himself, to his friends, even to us.
You said that you had never gone to work drunk.
I'm sure there are a lot of times I went to work when I couldn't have passed any test.
So can we call it for what it was? You would work drunk?
Yeah.
Is that hard to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
You might say former television reporter George Watson has been given one more assignment, possibly his last. Remember when we asked him 4 months ago if he was writing this story, how would it end?
With my last breath.
We asked him to write it again. As stories go, the most important rewrite of his life.
There is no end to this story. Recovery is a daily thing, and George is in the middle of it. For the rest of his life, he can't take a drink. And the odds are against him. Will he make it?
George Watson continues his sobriety. He says he goes to AA meetings every day, has moved from a halfway house to an apartment which he shares with another recovering alcoholic, and makes his living now working odd jobs. Watson tells us he's been sober since February 3rd, the longest he's gone without a drink since he was 15.